Hello, Riderflex Nation. Steve Irvin here again from recruiting and consulting firm Riderflex. We provide career advice and job interviewing tips on this podcast. And if you enjoy the show, please remember to subscribe to our channel and like the episodes. And on today's Riderflex podcast, we have Becca Schepps, the founder and CEO of Mortal Kombucha. Becca, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you so much for being on the Riderflex show. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with you just telling the listeners a little about yourself personally. Like what's, family, where you're from, where you live, just some personal stuff before we get into the business.
Yeah. I'm from originally New Jersey, Princeton, New Jersey.
Oh,
and
okay.
Yeah. Went to Wisconsin for school, for university.
Now, why'd you do that? If you were from New Jersey, why'd you pick Wisconsin?
They're like the U.S. News and World Reports would come out with that like top 50 best school rankings.
Okay.
And I met with my college advisor and they were like, apply to these 12 schools. And I just applied to them. This is like very, I guess, not how college stuff goes these days with parents being overly involved. And I got into all the schools and I looked and the best two were NYU and Wisconsin.
Oh, okay. All right.
And growing up in Princeton, New Jersey, like colleges look like they do on television shows. And when I went to go visit NYU, I was like, ugh. And then I went to Wisconsin and it looked like a big Princeton. So I went to Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
That's basically what dragged me there.
How was the first winter there? Was that tough?
Well, so when I chose that, my mom was like, it gets cold there. And I was like, Mom, cold's cold. How cold can cold be? And then that's when I had the realization that -10 is 40 degrees colder.
Right.
So it was miserable. I think I cursed it every year. Me and my roommate, who was from DC, used to say like, so when they were traveling from the East Coast to the West Coast, why the hell would they stop here?
Right. Like, that's a great question.
A little further, they would have gotten to California. Why would they stop here?
Great question. Oh, that's good.
Yeah, they look like Germany, apparently. So we found our answer, but so it's a lot of like Germans and, from that region ended up.
Oh, gotcha. And what'd you major in?
I majored in art history, political science, and Italian.
What? And you ended up being a creative professional. How'd that happen?
Yeah. So there's like, so I wanted to be a business major originally. And the business school was highly competitive at Wisconsin. So there was a bell curve for all business school prerequisites. And when you have a highly competitive program with a bell curve, I just remember on an accounting test that had 100 questions, I got 3 wrong. And
you didn't make it?
And I got a C.
Whoa.
So it was like, and so it was just really, and then Econ 101, I could not like stay awake for, and I realized maybe this wasn't my path. So I dropped the business school thing and I just started taking classes I liked.
Okay.
And then it turned out I get to my junior year and you have to declare a major, and I sat down with my advisor and they were like, hey, everything that you took from political science fell into an art history major, and everything art history fell into like the kind of extra random classes for a political science major. So you kind of already have 2 majors. And if you just keep taking Italian, you'll have Italian. And you need that if you ever want to go back to grad school for art history. Because originally I really wanted to work at an auction house or at a gallery.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right.
And I wanted to, and it kind of, political science kind of fell in because I was focusing on inner World War II art. So political science does give you like a weird history story that then appears in art.
Gotcha.
So that was kind of my path. And then I was also on the cycling team. I was on the rowing team originally.
All right. Wow.
And then I quit that. And I think I had an internship at Rolling Stone magazine and Us Weekly.
That's a cool internship to have.
Yeah, it was a cool internship, but all I was doing was like sitting in a closet making media kits. And it was like a summer that it rained for like 40 days straight, like a plague.
Okay.
And I just remember being so depressed. And so when it stopped raining, I started riding a bike. And then I told my mom, I think I'm going to join the cycling team because I think Lance Armstrong is winning his 5th Tour de France. This is a very circular story of how I ended up in where I ended up. But
so you were a pretty big athlete in high school then. You were always athletic, in shape.
Athletic and in shape, but I didn't play any sports. I played soccer for a few years, and then I was actually in the marching band.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm guessing to make the rowing team or the cycling team of Wisconsin, I'm guessing you got to be pretty good.
Yeah. I think I was just like, I'm naturally athletic, but I don't think I have a competitive sport drive.
Okay.
Like, it's not where I want to win as bad as other things.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, my parents thought my new cycling dreams while watching Lance Armstrong win were ridiculous. So they were like, well, then you should ride a bike. So I got back to school and started riding a bike. Okay. Got really into it.
Okay.
This is my senior year of college, went on a spring break cycling team trip. And when I got back, it said graduation deficiency. And my advisor had messed up and had approved me for graduation. But I had never taken a literature credit, which is ridiculous because I read so much.
Wow.
And I had 3 majors at this point, and I just was missing a literature credit.
And
so at that point,
so you thought you were about to graduate, but
I thought I was about to graduate, and I had 2 job offers: one at Art News and one at being an account executive at, I think it was J. Walter Thompson or some ad agency in New York.
Now this all came from the internships, right? This is how that started, right? A little bit.
A little bit, yeah, and just like applying for jobs and having good grades, I guess.
Yep, gotcha.
So I had to tell those jobs that I was not available, and like, would they wait till I actually graduated because I had to take a literature credit?
Okay.
Which ended up changing the entire trajectory of my entire life. So I spent the summer taking the American short story, which we read comic books and short stories.
Wow.
In like this 5-week program or class, and riding my bike a lot more. And then the jobs obviously didn't wait for me because it wasn't like a finance job where they had invested in you and they're going to wait for you.
Right.
And then when I got out, I really just was like, I had the best summer ever because I had 1 class and free time in Wisconsin, and it's beautiful in the summer.
Beautiful. Right. Yep. Mm-hmm.
When I got back, I applied for some more jobs. I ended up being working at an architecture firm in Philadelphia, doing PR and graphic design-ish.
All right.
Where I learned for the first time that you really have to like what you're going to do because you do it a lot. And I did not like what I was doing at all. But the people were really nice, so they let me I spent a lot of time just like surfing the internet.
Okay.
Trying to figure out what to do with my life with 3 majors and no goals.
Now, is this 2004, 2005?
2004, yeah.
Okay.
So then I finally figured out that I wanted to work in the creative department in an ad agency. But to get in there, you need a portfolio. So I talked to them, and I would commute from Philly up to New York City 2 days a week to take a night class. At the School of Visual Arts, and I took classes there. And finally a teacher there confronted me and was like, you're very talented, but you're very tired. Because I had to work at 8 a.m. and then I would go take these night classes till 9 p.m. and then have to commute back.
I see.
And do all my work for these night classes. I was like, yeah. And then he kind of was like, there's these schools, if you can afford a school, and they kind of are these intensives to help you get a portfolio together, you'll get a better job. So I quit my architecture firm, went back to working at the restaurant that I worked at in high school, was a camp counselor. So all that was like a dark period, I would call in my life. I was like, oh my God, I'm reverting. But then I ended up going to a school in Atlanta that's called the Creative Circus, which is a very ridiculous name, but a very good school.
Okay.
Putting together a portfolio. And then I took my first job in 2007 in San Francisco at an agency called Publicist Hal Riney.
Had you been to California before that?
Yeah. Been there. So I actually was offered a job in Boulder, in Colorado where I live now, and one in San Francisco. And I chose San Francisco, I do not really know why, over the one in Boulder, which was at the time, the best agency in the world. And I ended up working there later, but I still don't know why I chose San Francisco, but I loved San Francisco. And then the recession happened and I got laid off. So.
Gotcha. Okay. So you're out in San Francisco. All of a sudden you don't have a job.
I moved back to New York. My creative director who had to lay me off was crying in his office as he laid me off. And he kind of got through his Rolodex and found me freelance. He was like, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to move back east, back home.
Okay.
And he just kind of got his Rolodex out and he found me freelance work and took it from there. It was a hard time to work in advertising in 2009.
Yeah, I believe it.
That's like the first budget that gets cut.
Yep.
So it was really awesome that he found me a bunch of work. And then I ended up working at Lowe, which became Deutsch. Then I went to Saatchi, where I worked on a lot of beer, fruit snacks, and Yoplait.
Are you living in Jersey or New York at this time?
New York City. I lived in Brooklyn.
Okay. All right.
Then I worked at RGA, which is a digital agency, worked on really great projects. And then I was actually racing my bike through all this because the bike kind of stayed with me. And I remember I came home one day to my apartment after work trying to move my car from alternate side of the street parking, and my roof rack was stolen from my car. And I kind of fell to my knees and screamed up like that I hated New York City. And the next day, another agency in San Francisco called trying to interview me. And then the following day, an agency, Crispin Porter in Boulder, Colorado called, and I ended up taking a job with them in Colorado. And that's how I'm here.
And you've lived in Boulder ever since. What year was that?
That was 2013.
2013. Okay. So you've been here for the last 6 years. But, I mean, Boulder, Colorado in general is pretty cool, right? I mean. Yeah.
It's very, very, very nice.
Pretty awesome place to live. Nothing against Jersey or New York or San Francisco.
No, I mean, like I always joke that if you have overpriced real estate and I'm really just right too late for like the market bubble, that's where I go.
Oh, okay. So you're in Boulder, you're working.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I worked at Crispin Porter Bogusky for, I think it was 10 months. And then they lost some clients. I wanted to quit because it was just it wasn't the right environment, especially after RGA. I loved RGA. Like if RGA wasn't in New York and I wasn't having like a mental breakdown of my life of being in New York City, I would have stayed there forever. So I started looking for freelance work so I could quit. And a couple days before I quit, they laid me off with severance. So that kind of worked out. Yeah. So then, I've been freelancing for the past, 5 years.
And then one day you walked in and you bought a bottle of kombucha.
Yeah, well, so I was always I have type 1 diabetes, which makes sugary drinks like a very challenging thing to consume. It's not that I can't, it just makes it a lot of planning and insulin dosing and balancing. So I kind of am like a diet soda addict, love water. Like water is my favorite drink. And kombucha actually also never spiked my blood sugar, so it was an alternative that I really enjoyed as well.
Okay.
And I was working on a freelance project. We were doing some packaging design for a Nestle or a General Mills, a big company. So you go through rounds and rounds of feedback and advertising. You're doing really fun things, but you're often staying there till like ungodly hours. And it's like a lot of just waiting and then intense work and waiting and intense work. So I couldn't drink another cup of coffee. So I was at a coffee shop and I was buying a kombucha. And we're now like designing this packaging and I'm getting feedback on the correct way or like legally approved ways to say good for you or something. Cause you can't just say good for you. It can't be a qualifier. It has to be a proven fact if you're going to write it on your label.
What was the product?
It was a ice cream brand.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. It is not the ice cream brand that's in my portfolio though. It was a different ice cream brand. Okay. So I was just holding this bottle of kombucha and in the ingredients, as an ingredient, it said love. And I just remember.
Can you do that? I don't know.
No, you can't. And like when you can do it when you're small because you're not worth noticing or you're not worth going after.
I see.
But when you're like a General Mills, Procter & Gamble, Nestle, they just are so risk averse that they would never do that. Mm-hmm. And I just started like losing my mind. And I don't know, you're just even working too late and too long on something. And I started making Mortal Kombat, Mortal Kombucha puns. Because as a big kombucha drinker, I knew that it was like I knew that all the brands were very hippie and very like namaste and good vibes.
Right.
So but I also knew that it was a slightly caffeinated drink because it's made from black and green tea that's fermented. It has bubbles. It has under 0.5% alcohol, but it has alcohol. And I thought it was ridiculous that everyone was going so soft with it.
Ah, I see.
So at the moment, I started making Mortal Kombat Mortal Kombucha drinks. And I was like, I'm going to make aggressive kombucha. It's going to be Monster Energy, Red Bull kombucha.
I see.
And I started making finish it jokes of like the fatality scenes that they have in Mortal Kombat. And we got back to our desks, my partner and I just thought this was the funniest joke in the world. I started downloading like Mortal Kombat fatality scene desktop wallpaper.
And were you making kombucha at home yourself?
No, I barely cook.
Oh,
so
okay.
Definitely not. I just thought this was so funny. In advertising, you don't make things often. You make ideas, and then somebody else makes things.
Now, were you at this point? Did you like go on GoDaddy and see if Mortal Kombucha URL was available and all that? Okay, all right.
Yeah, it was available. The Instagram was available. The Twitter was available. So I started, as we're waiting for our next round of legal feedback, I am designing a Squarespace site. Comping up, I downloaded like a Photoshop rendering for a bottle, made a label, came up with flavor names, wrote product copy, because you can just, using some like free mock-ups, you can just like make something look very real.
Now, had you already like filed for an LLC or like created a company or anything at that point?
No, nothing there.
Like that. No, okay, you were like, hey, I'm just going to get the URL. I'm going to.
Yeah, it was $100 for the year.
I'm going to create some logos or some. Okay, I'm with you. You started doing some of that creative work around it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what my job was, and I and I just think that it was so funny to create this funny brand. And the first version of the website was very morbid and aggressive because we were photoshopping out blood spurting from someone's head. Like,
well, you still have somebody who looks like they're drinking blood on the website today, even.
Yeah, but it was straight from the video game, which would be highly illegal too. But yeah, okay. And we were putting like a champagne burst of from a champagne burst instead.
I see.
But yeah, so.
And are you throwing it out there in your head? Are you like, okay, I'm going to just throw this out there and like see if I get some traction. I want to see can I get some followers? Was that your early intention? Like, let me just see what this does.
Yeah, I just made coming from advertising, I would just make little, Facebook friendly graphics and I would post them and be like, hey guys, check out my new kombucha company. And, with probably better language than that. And, if you want some for the holidays, we have the Santa, I don't know, it was probably Suck It Santa pack. I don't know. It was everything was super aggressive. And then people were
hold on. I want to stop right there. You're telling people, you're like, hey, I have this product.
Yeah.
You want to buy it. But actually there wasn't really a company or product yet.
Correct. One of the flavors was called napalm. I thought people would know it was a joke. So there was a flavor called napalmogranate, which was pomegranate and cayenne.
Okay.
And and I really made these flavors in my head too. So there was pomegranate and cayenne. We'd call it napalmogranate. The puns came first, the flavors came second. And and then we I wrote copy and we mocked up a bottle, put it as a product and turned the e-commerce store on. And then I would talk about it on Facebook.
Wow. So the website back then had a cart?
Yeah.
What does the website today have a cart? Because I didn't see one.
It's hidden.
It's hidden. How come?
I don't like shipping things anymore. It's not worth it. If you want to buy it, go to Whole Foods.
Okay. All right. So I didn't mean to jump fast forward. All right. So anyway, at first you got this cart and people are placing order. When did you get your first order? Talk to me about that moment where you woke up and you're like, oh my God, there's something in the cart.
The first orders were responses to a social post that wasn't on the cart. So people would be like, I'll take some. How do I get it?
Oh, I see.
I was like, oh, and I would get home from that freelance project. Because I did not let the joke die probably for 2 weeks every day. My partner at work was just like, oh my God. Because I'd be like, 10 apples. Oh my God, that'd be so funny. And then I would come home and I would talk about it to my husband.
What was he saying? Was he like?
He was like, let's make it. Let's make it. And I was like, oh, let's try to find a private label. Let's try to find a co-packer.
Right.
But that's how you do things in advertising. Who's going to make this for me now?
Right. Yep.
Or I was like, oh, maybe I should find someone to do a video and we can do a Kickstarter. Then somebody else could figure out how to do this.
Yes.
And at that point, I think kombucha was, as a beverage and industry, was smaller and new enough that those routes were not easy.
I see. Okay.
So I tried and I could not find someone who would make my kombucha for me because most companies that were making it couldn't even cover their own capacity. So he was like, we can make it. People make this. And I was like, ugh. So we went to the brew supply store down the street from us. And I walked in and I was like, I have a kombucha company, which I still probably didn't have an LLC. And I was like, how do you make kombucha? And they looked at me like I was an idiot, but they loaded me up with a book, or I think they told me to go to Barnes & Noble and get some book.
Okay.
They gave me instructions and they gave me like a jar and some temperature strips and stuff. They told me, and this book was really helpful, and we went home and the book said it was going to take 3 weeks. So I responded to all the orders. I think we had there was 10 people on this spreadsheet that I made where people could say what flavors they wanted. And there was probably 3 online orders from out of state. And I said to everyone it would be ready in 3 weeks. That's what the book said. And
wow.
Yeah. Wow. And then
so you're making it. So then you're making it in your kitchen.
Yeah. And because I worked in advertising, I knew how to source labels, form factors or bottles. I knew how to do all that.
Okay.
So I figured all that out, and in 3 weeks I packaged it up and I delivered it to people's houses around Boulder. And then the ones that were out of state, I quickly realized was going to be very expensive because it's a perishable beverage. So it has to be kept cold.
Oh.
So then I was like, oh shoot. So I went on my Nextdoor app and I posted to collect people's, their Blue Apron boxes and their Fresh Directs and all those
great idea
things. And I got them and I made stickers that said Mortal Kombucha's commitment to reincarnated packaging.
Oh my gosh.
The sticker just had this list of things that you could do with it now that it's yours.
Great idea.
So yeah, when people got their packages because there were some people I knew, there were some people that I knew through people.
Okay.
So if it was a friend, I had no problem. But the people that were one removed, I was like, ugh. And then so I put these stickers all over it. So when you got a Blue Apron box with my stuff, it didn't look so shady and you kind of made you feel good.
I think that's brilliant.
So we did that. And then you started
getting reorders.
Yeah. So I just kept talking about it because I still didn't do any legal research on what it means to be a food company at that point.
I was just about to ask you, was there any FDA stuff or I don't don't you?
Yeah, yeah, there is. So I kind of just kept just doing that and talking about it, making it in my house, which all that is not legal. And then the tipping point was a magazine contacted me, Bicycling Magazine.
Okay.
And they had seen the posts from me on Instagram and my Facebook page or something, an editor there. And she asked if she could feature me in an article for their June issue. And it was December or January at this time. And so from knowing how magazines work, I was like, okay, June 1st, that means May 15th hits newsstands. How hard would it be to be a legit food company? I could do that in 5 months.
Because you knew once that article hit, you're going to get some orders then for sure.
Yeah, actually, I think I had sat down with Ian and I said, how many people do you think would really order something after seeing it in a magazine? He's like, more than you'd think.
Probably, yeah.
Oh,
I would guess so.
So I was like, okay. So I said yes to the article. I said that they couldn't photograph me at my factory because my factory was a wire rack in my house. And I spent those 5 months figuring out how to become a food company legally.
Wow.
So within those 5 months, I found a space that this woman's kitchen who did fermented foods, because the other problem was fermented foods, like beer, basically, they just need to sit somewhere in a very controlled, clean environment. Mm-hmm. Most shared kitchens are for food trucks and stuff. They're disgusting. They're dirty. There's dry and cold storage, but not clean manufacturing.
Okay.
Storage.
Yep.
So I kind of stumbled into this kitchen, which was really great. We ended up there for I think the first year. And
now, let me ask you right here. So cash outlay. So so many entrepreneurs, right? Or so many want to be entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
It's all about okay, how do I quit my job and get enough capital to start? Can I just pause you right? Because now you're leasing a kitchen, and now there's investment happening, right? Before revenues come in. Can you
Yeah.
Did you bootstrap that? Did you have some money saved up? And as personal as you want to go, and I don't want to push you too far, I just know that that's the whole thing with 90% of the people that listen to this podcast is, everybody's like, okay, well, how'd they do that? Like, did they borrow some money? Did they have money saved up? What'd they do? Can you talk about that for just a little bit?
Yeah. So I think what makes my story, and because I've been meeting a lot of entrepreneurs and founders through this, and they're always just look at me with their jaw dropped because there was no business plan. There was no plan. There was a vision because like my husband always jokes that when I'm bored or there's downtime in my life, like I can't deal with it. That's my most stressful state. Like I need something to be moving forward. Even in this company, we'll get something big, it'll happen. And I'll be like, well, what now? It's a failure. There's nothing else happening. So I was in a point in my life where freelance was going well, but it was kind of slow. And so that's how this all happened. So so no plan, no business plan. The kitchen was, I believe the rent was like $400 a month.
Okay.
Which was super cheap.
Okay.
The equipment was, I bootstrapped all that, but I mean, it was a couple $100.
So total investment for the first month of your kitchen was under $1,000.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it was $1,000. It wasn't coming from like, working for 10 years in advertising. It wasn't something that I wasn't worth investing. It wasn't going to make a dent anywhere.
Gotcha.
But yeah, maybe $1,000. And I also had been illegally doing it in these glass jars in my kitchen and had already kind of talked people into buying it from me.
Right. Gotcha.
So I kind of had, and like, when I was making them, and I think I sat down with some people in the very beginning that were in grocery and food and beer and things like that. The thing that they kept warning to me was margins. Everybody's going to need 1%, a broker, your distributors, everything. So when I started making the flavors, because I had no idea what I was doing, our flavors are simple. Like the recipes are very simple. There's very like calculated time of when you add things, but the ingredients are very simple because everyone was like, you got to protect your margins. You can't do this.
And how did you decide what to sell it for at first? Did you just look on the shelf?
Yeah. So so I love math and spreadsheets mostly because I like color coding them, which then my brother, who is a mergers and acquisitions person, told me colors are supposed to mean things, not just be pretty colors on a spreadsheet. But so like, I just made these formulas that were like, okay, if we need to be this price on shelf, and I know that means I need to sell it. Let's say we get big, that means it's going to be this price to a distributor. And I'm going to have to include a broker in. Okay, here's all the percents down that no recipe can cost more than this cents per bottle. Gotcha. And I did that at small scale.
And were you doing that? Were you laying that part out as you were getting the kitchen and everything leased out and set up? You're kind of doing all this at the same time? Okay. Yeah,
and I did that from the very, very beginning because I wanted to make sure I was making money.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah,
so even when it was in my kitchen, I was like, okay, if this 1 gallon jar is going to make 12 bottles and 12 bottles are going to be $4 each direct, that's $48. Okay, I need to be making $1 to $2 on a bottle.
Gotcha. And you were able to keep your finished retail at about the same that other kombucha bottles were going for in the stores at that time, or no?
Yeah, we were, mostly because I think a lot of companies, especially in the natural space, they try to come out with like really, really unique, clean, adaptogenic, Ayurvedic ingredients that end up being very expensive when you're buying them small.
I see.
And I was just like, and especially as a soda drinker, I came to the thing was like, I want to drink apple cider, but I can't have a cup of apple cider. So let's make apple cider kombucha.
Okay.
So it was the intention was like, let's make a soda that's good for you with these like very palatable, childlike nostalgia flavors that are something I want to drink.
How much revenue had you generated by the time you started the kitchen? Do you remember?
I remember thinking like, because everyone told me I was going to get sued because it was Mortal Kombucha, and then I LLC'd and it's trademarked. But as of like right away, I did that. Yeah. After, but everyone told me I was going to get sued, so we used to refer to it as rent money. because it was making like $1,700 a month immediately.
It was. Okay, 17. Yeah. All right. So 17. Okay, great.
That was my rent.
1,700 and profits margins are what? 50%? 60%?
Yeah, 50 to 70%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. So $700 a month in profit up front before you signed on in the kitchen. Okay, that gives people a little foundation. Okay, now then you get the kitchen. Now, did you stop freelance work at that time and say, I'm going for it? When did you push all the chips into the table?
I still do freelance work because I love it.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right.
Yeah.
I got you.
So like I'll take little projects here and there, mostly, so we were in that kitchen. Serendipitously, we ended up getting into Lucky's supermarkets, which was there was 4 of them.
How'd you do that?
A friend of mine who has a coffee company called The Coffee Ride was drinking a bottle of our kombucha that he bought from me directly outside of Lucky's Market. The buyer walked out, said, "What's that? That looks like a cool kombucha."
Wow.
And then I set a meeting with them to go in and bring them the other flavors. He tried them on the spot and was like, let's put everyone in. And at that point, I also had no knowledge about about how to run a production line, like production schedule. So we had
so when he said, "Hey, I need 1,000 of these next week," you were like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And then
the bigger problem was that we had 9 flavors because whenever I thought something was a funny pun, we'd just make the flavor. So I think now we have 8 flavors, 5 in Whole Foods. I think Lucky's has 6, and yeah.
Were you scrambling to get that first Lucky's order in?
Oh, I mean, everything's been a scramble, and I was freelancing at the same time, so I would be taking like a day-long project. So I'd be waking up at 5 a.m., going to the kitchen, bottling, mixing, brewing all the flavors until 8:30, then driving to do a freelance project from 9 to 5, getting out there, and then going and working till like midnight or 1 a.m. bottling again. Love it.
I love the hustle. I mean, every entrepreneur can relate to that right there, right? They all of us. If you're an entrepreneur and you really want to make it go, it's about the hustle at first. So much.
Yeah, and it was a lot of funny because my advertising friends are just like, "Oh, it's so cool that you get to do this," and I'm like, "You guys have no idea. All we do is make stuff pretty. Like you have no idea how do you find who delivers 2,000 pounds of sugar? Where do you put 2,000 pounds of sugar?" Those became the bigger problems of especially as we were in a small kitchen, there was nowhere for me to put 2,000 pounds of sugar, or our pallets of bottles were way higher than the shelf that we had. And pallets of bottles get shipped with the bottles upside down. So you have to flip every bottle the other way before you re-put it on the shelf. And those little seconds, now I'm a master of what can take 1 second less because we'll do something 10,000 times.
Right.
And that's a lot of time.
Yep. I love it. I love all of that. So you're still to this. So now, how big is the company now? Revenue? I mean, do you want to share that or give us a general idea?
Yeah, close to $500,000.
Wow. $500,000. And what year is this?
This is we're at right now 2 years and 1 month later.
So your first year you did what, 200,000, and then you doubled it your second?
The first year was probably maybe a little under 100.
Wow, you went from under 100 to 500,000.
Yeah. So what happened was, so the first year was 2017. So I guess it was 2017, January. 2018. So we're wrapping up the third-ish year, I guess.
Okay.
But we didn't get into Lucky's until, and that's from I have a funny joke to now. So I never really know when to start the actual company.
Do you have employees?
I have 4 employees, and then we also work with some, a demo company to help us do brand ambassadors and demos. I have some food safety contractors that come in, some product development teams that I bring in.
Now,
stuff like that.
Employees is a whole nother world, right? Now all of a sudden you're responsible. You got somebody coming onto your team and saying, "Hey, can you hire me?" And they're hoping you're going to make payroll so that they can pay their rent next week, right? That's a very
stressful thing. And and you need them to show up and do their job.
Yes. And a lot of times they're not as passionate as you are, right? Most times they're not as passionate as the founder.
Yeah, and I mean, even if they are as passionate, they're not as. I mean, it was funny as we've been scaling and we've gone from hand filling to these beer guns to now a bottling line. Mm-hmm. The bottling line will be having some pressure problems, and the employee is getting sprayed with kombucha and they'll be like, oh, this is the worst. And then we will shut it down because it's broken. And we'll have, for the first time, one of my employees had to go back one step of how we used to do it. And he was like, oh, I'm never going to complain again. I'm like, yes, you're bottling 5 bottles a minute right now. We were at 48 bottles a minute. So how do you like this? And he's like, oh, I will get sprayed by kombucha all day. I don't even care.
Oh, that's so good. So you got full-time employees now.
Yeah, we don't run production full time, but
Okay.
yeah, so that's the one thing. We run production 3 days a week, and then we have deliveries that we do some of our own delivering. So there's like, 3 or 4 days a week that people can work.
Did you manage people before this in your other jobs?
Yes, but not like this.
Not like this, yeah. What's some advice you would give to entrepreneurs that are starting to hire people? Are there a couple of tips you'd give them?
The biggest tip that has worked well for me and that I need to get better at practicing is, and this is for production employees, because that's been like that's our biggest labor need, is just hire them, but fire fast.
So hire fast and fire fast, basically.
Hire fast, fire fast. Because there's been people where I'm like, no way, and then they're great.
Yep.
Because or I'll bring people in for a test day, and I will pay them for that day, just to make sure that they have hustle. Mm-hmm. Because for me, I really do just see every bathroom break as like throwing a few pennies into a bottle.
Yeah, you don't think that way until you become a business owner,
and I'm just
right?
like, oh, what are they doing? Or so
I remember the very first time we had a Riderflex employee go on vacation.
Yeah.
And I woke up after a couple of days and I asked my wife, I said, so how's it feel to pay somebody to not work?
Yeah, right. That's how I feel during lunch, because I do pay them for an 8-hour day, and I let them take a lunch, which is nicer than some other people, but
it's a different feeling. It's a different when you're interviewing and you're talking to somebody that wants to work for you. What character traits or personality? What are you looking for in that person when you're visiting with them?
So we do, since we have like a partially automated, like semi-automated and automated line. So you are in this room when we're doing production. So you are in this space for someone for like 8 to 10 hours, and you can still hear, because we don't have like a lot, like there's some glass clanking, but people don't wear headphones, and you got to know that the person can carry a conversation.
Right.
A little bit, because it does change as we've been growing. I've been trying to make sure that we have the right cultural people culture-wise running production.
And what is that culture? What is that culture? What are you trying to make that culture be?
Yeah, that's been like a big struggle, because like I realized, oh man, we have all these workers, but like no one wants to be here, and no one really cares about whole foods and natural foods and food.
I see.
So I am trying to make sure I get some people that are interested in making the product we're making, which is like a good for you food that's fun.
Good.
But aren't a little overly precious, about natural food. They have to be on board for like a fun time with healthy food.
Good.
So when they're like, ew, kombucha, and they're, I would never touch that stuff.
Interview over. Interview over.
Yeah. Right.
When it comes to being an entrepreneur, what advice would you give somebody out there listening to this recording that has an idea, wants to start their own business, but they just haven't done it, right? They're nervous. They're, just take a typical situation. Let's say, they got a mortgage, they got a car payment, they got, a kid at home, and they're just, and they're making $100,000 a year or $150,000 a year, but they really want to be an entrepreneur, but they just haven't done it. They're just worried. They're scared. What advice would you give them?
Don't do it. No. I would say, like, if you have a lot more time than you think you do.
Okay.
I actually had this conversation with another entrepreneur who asked me if I was all in, because I did. Like, I took 3 days of freelance work this week because they were cool projects. It's a way to flex my creative muscle, and I don't get to do that all the time. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoy them, and I have a great team that can go do it. And sometimes it just lets me, freelance creative projects are like my weekend for me. They're like a way to relax.
Is this why the entrepreneur was challenging you, saying you're not all in?
He said I was not all in because I wasn't doing it 100%. And to your point, like, I was like, basically we launched in Whole Foods in 6 states in May, and we went from
congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that goes from being a very highly profitable company to a break even, maybe not profitable company where we're spending so much money on scaling and marketing and to make sure that we're making our vendors happy so that we can expand more with them.
Mm-hmm.
So, but at the same time, I have a mortgage. I have like a life and a family that I need to support because I am also the breadwinner in our family and I was the high paid one.
Gotcha.
So for me, that became like, well, how much energy do I have to put into a day? And I will say like, my husband will be like, he'll wake up at 2 a.m. and he'll like roll over and be like, where's Becca? And I will have woken up and been like, oh, tomorrow morning I have to go do this, this, and this, but I need to get this and this and this done with the company, and I will go do it.
Wow.
Like I will go and I'll just work from like 2 a.m. to 7 a.m. so that I can get some stuff done.
So would you recommend then, would you tell the person listening, would you say, hey, listen, it is okay. You don't have to go all in at first if you don't, to make it work. You can.
I think you have to go in all in and believe. Like you have to believe I can do this. And I think the thing is like, if you have money funding you, go all in, do it.
That's
like,
different.
It's easy. If you don't, like, figure out what you can put all in. And I think that you just have to do it. Otherwise, you're just going to be making excuses for why you can't. And a mortgage and kids and a family are excuses. I mean, they're responsibilities, but they are excuses for why you can't, because you probably can figure out, you won't be able to, I can't launch in Walmart nationwide next week. There's no possible way for me to do that.
Yeah.
But I could sell it at a few local cafes to like make sure that there's traction and there's a different way to do it. And it's just figure out how you can do it so that you can meet your responsibilities. And and I like so many people come to me and they're like, but I don't have this and I don't have that. And I'm like, who cares? No one cares. Like, and even at this point, like the bottle label design that we have right now, I designed while standing at my kitchen table while my mother-in-law was talking to me and we were trying to plan on going for a walk. And I just needed to like get this label to a printer. So it was so half done. And then a friend of mine cleaned it up for me.
Gotcha.
I hate the label.
Oh,
and I hate the label, and I'm in advertising and in like packaging, and that drives me nuts. And I know, yes, we're in like a whole region of Whole Foods. I'm not too big to change the damn label.
Gotcha.
So many entrepreneurs are like, oh, but I need to get this part correct.
Correct. Perfect. Yeah.
The thing that you need to put out there is the idea and the thing. And so I'll tell anybody exactly how to start a company, because most people just won't.
They just won't. And to your point, they think they got to have it all in a nice little package and ribbons and bows and all tidy and the perfect business plan and the perfect label and this and that.
And you don't even know the problems you're going to have. Like I even think back to now, some of the people I've met with that I was trying to like use as mentors and have conversations with, and the questions I asked, they were stupid questions because they're so not relevant to like the actual problems that I never knew I would have.
Well, one of the things I love about you one of the things I love about your story that I think is really critical for the listeners to hear is just start, right? Just get started. Just go. Just move forward, take action and go. You don't have to have everything set perfect. You don't have to have a perfect plan. Just start somewhere. Take action. And
you don't even need an LLC.
You don't even need an LLC.
LLC is the easy one, but like you honestly don't need to have it trademarked.
Yeah, you really don't. No.
You don't need to have your money there. And because if you have the product and it's out and it's selling,
right,
you can claim it later. And I think a lot of money gets wasted by people on trying to make sure all their due diligence is tied up.
Agreed.
When if you ever are trying to get money and raise money, you're going to have this lawyer come in and tell you things that you didn't even know were wrong and that you need to get buttoned up and tied and like wait to pay that lawyer.
That's so great.
Yeah.
I love this is so in our third year at recruiting firm Riderflex here it was interesting. We were having dinner with the client the other night and he goes, so, what's your 3-year financial model and blah, blah, blah. And I said, he said, well, what do you want to do next year in volume? And I said, how about more?
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer, having been an executive myself for a couple of $40 million companies. You can spend a lot of time drawing up monopoly fantasy plans on whiteboards and not take action. And I just think it's so cool how you just moved forward and you're like, hey, listen, I'm just moving forward and I'll take it as it comes. I love it.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's like projections you can make any projections. I can be like, year 5, we're going to be, at Costco's nationwide and their number one selling SKU. So we'll be at this revenue. But I think budget is important.
Yeah. Budget.
So like, you make your projections, it's like a dream list. It's like your maybe, but make sure that your budgets, especially if you're trying to do money and stuff.
Right.
Because budget is correct.
Running out of cash is the number one issue. By the way, what has been what's been the scariest moment so far? What's one of those moments where you woke up in the middle of the night and in a sweat and you kind of in a panic mode? Talk to me about that. So
there's been a few. The first one was the way we got into Whole Foods was very and I always my parents and my husband criticized me to say oh, and then this happened. And without and do you know how hard you work on a daily basis? But I basically will tell my story to anybody. And a food broker company decided to give me a little shot and they brought me into a Whole Foods meeting with another brand. And then next thing I know, Whole Foods contacts me and is like, hey, SKU ranking, which is the order of your best sellers, which I wasn't even using QuickBooks at this moment.
Right. You're like, I don't
even really know. My financials were clumped in with my freelance financials. So
gotcha.
Until June of last year, there was no differentiation between my LLC and me as a person.
I love it.
Which is terrible. But, so I just kind of made up the flavors I like to make the best in order, which may or may not have been correct. But, and then I kind of never thought anything of it. And then 4 months later, I'm at an airport to fly home or back to New York because my friend got diagnosed with breast cancer and she's getting a double mastectomy. And I'm sitting in the airport and I get an email that says, congratulations from Whole Foods, you've been accepted. Fill out this paperwork and get all this stuff and you have to register with our distributor UNFI within 48 hours. And I'm like, it's December 22nd. So I'm like, no. There's no way that this is real. And I asked some friends that work for other food brands and they're like, don't worry about it. Do it on your time. Just get it done.
Good.
And I was like, no, this is way too stressful right now. So I closed my computer and I'm just like, I will look at this on January 2nd. But I'm just like, but at my same time, I'm like, we're in this old kitchen where there's no way they haven't given me a store listing yet. So I'm like, maybe they'll give me 4 stores.
Right.
So I'm just like, ooh, so a lot of that's going on in my head. I get back January 2nd. I start emailing the buyer, asking her how many stores. She asked me if there's going to be a problem.
Oh boy! See,
I say no problem. No, I just trying to figure things out. And then she goes, "Okay, we're giving you all the stores, which is 32 stores."
Wow! And so you're at that moment you're starting to panic again, but you're not letting her see that.
No, and when I see this email, I'm at a Christmas party dinner for a company, and I'm in the farthest back corner from the exit. I read this email that says, all the stores.
All the stores.
I think that's my heart stopped. I started sweating profusely. Tears were dripping out of my eyes. And I just and people are giving speeches and I can't leave. And I'm just controlled breathing. And I just as soon as there's a break between speeches, I just leave and I get into my car and I'm like, oh God. I'm doing math in my head of at the minimum number, because we went into a Whole Foods and asked them how many cases per week per SKU does certain brands sell, so I could project how much we have to create.
Yeah.
And I realized not only is there no possible way for me to make this much because we don't have the vessels, but there's no way for me to put this much in the walk-in refrigerator that we currently have at our kitchen. So we need to move. So in February we moved I somehow and then again, it's just telling everybody your problem. But smiling, oh, it's so crazy, right? We found a great kitchen to move into that had all this freezer, refrigerator space. And this guy was going to give us part of his private commercial kitchen for us to use a couple days a week. But on a weekend we moved, it was 25,000 pounds of product and stuff. And we had to move liquid because we did not have time to be able to just dump product. that was fermenting, because kombucha is a fermentation process.
Right.
So like we have these like, we have like a, 500 gallon container, and a gallon is 8 pounds each, and I want to move this container. So it's like, well, we can't move that. Like there's no van that we can get this into, and it's an open top, and we don't have so it's like, okay, we're going to move this in 5-gallon buckets, like 40 minutes up the road.
Wow.
As many 5-gallon buckets as we can get and seal. And then we're going to, so it was like getting home. And I mean, my hands hurt.
Wow.
Everything hurt. And so that was very stressful.
Did you fill the order? Did you get the order filled?
Yeah, we did, which was nuts.
Did you you didn't have to take on any temporary capital or cash infusion to get that production ramped up at all?
No. So like at that point we had Lucky's. We were in like probably 30 other stores.
Okay.
So, and we were making money.
I got you.
And our rent was $400 still.
Right.
So now our rent is $2,200 a month.
Gotcha.
And that's like my last stressful point is, and then we had a very aggressive demo and in-store promotion program.
Okay.
For our first 4 months of launch. And so we were spending everything we made on in-store.
I see.
So basically it went from being like, whoa. And then we had to ramp up. We invested in a bottling line because we went from 5 bottles a minute to 48 bottles a minute.
Okay.
And so every single penny that we made all of the last 2 years, except for like a very small percent, has gone into like labor, like, new rents, production, and the sales are now catching up. You're
scaling the business up. Are you paying yourself very little?
I was just like being like, oh, cool. If I wanted a salary, it's in there. And now I've reinvested my salary technically. So I'm not paying myself, but I am calculating my labor into the bottle price.
Good. No, that's a good idea. Great idea. Idea. You're scaling up the business. That's awesome. Congrats. So by the way, the Whole Foods thing was a super scary moment and also a Super Bowl moment all at the same time, right?
Yeah. And that was the thing where I was telling you, like, I was like, okay, and I didn't believe it was true the whole time, because they just send you in like, yeah, you'll be in 33 stores. You'll be getting an order from UNFI, because I don't communicate with Whole Foods. They communicate with their distributor. The distributor places the order from me.
Yeah. Right.
So I'm just like, okay. And a really good friend of mine was getting married in Hawaii. And I remember them saying, I'm so stressed out. Like I needed a team at that point. So like, I'm trying to like build employees and teach them everything that's in my head. I don't have recipes written down. I hire a food safety person to come in to like write our HACCP plan, which is hazards and critical control points, and to make sure we're logging correctly and we're batch records. And because everything I did was I Googled like, how would you do this? And found an online form. So like all of that. And then being like, oh man, our likelihood of getting in trouble going to like 5 people is one thing. But like now that you have Whole Foods shoppers, like what if, God, my liability has increased, and oh God, like, are we doing things safe enough? And we actually were, but it was nice to have like somebody come in and check you. So all that's going on, like trying to write like standard operating procedures down like correctly. And I'm like, I have to go to a wedding for a week in Hawaii, which sounds like, oh, poor you. But like, I can't continue to miss life moments.
Right. And you're trying to run a company, right?
And I'm trying to run a company. I'm going to go to this wedding. I'm going to go to this wedding. Okay. And while we're at this wedding, I was like, man, they said that order was going to come in sometime soon. And I still haven't seen it. And like, they told us the pickup would be like end of April. And we would get the order a month ahead of time. And I'm like, man. So we go to the wedding. It's all good. We get back. And I'm like, I cannot believe this order has not come through. So I check my archive trash. And the way that they send orders is just like a bunch of numbers, and there's like no attachment. So like, as I'm like going through my junk mail, just like swiping or my mail, just like get rid of junk, I totally just put this order in my trash.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, oh God, it is here. And oh my God, they're coming in like 2 weeks. Oh God. But yeah, like my projections were correct. And like we did stock, like have the right numbers ready. And you do give the distributor your lead time.
I see.
So I kind of was trying to figure out like what that lead time would be, because then you have to also know that you're a refrigerated product with an expiration date, and they want to make sure they have rules of how much of your expiration date can be left, a percent, when they pick up.
I see.
So you have to make sure that you're giving your lead time so that, your production isn't running. But if you tell them, hey, we need 6 weeks lead time, they're going to order so much every 6 weeks that they may not be able to account for, their scaling and stuff, like how much they have to put in stores.
Yep.
So there's like a dance between short lead times and long lead times, and I went with short. But the initial order was like 15 pallets, which was insane.
I love the fact that you had no CPG, no food and beverage, you had none of that experience whatsoever.
I knew how to design products.
Right. You had that part, but
which is an expensive part, I guess.
Right. Yeah. The fact that you could kind of fund yourself doing that and not having to pay anybody for it, that was huge at first, I think.
Yeah. Not having to pay a branding agency is pretty big. And I think that a lot of expense goes there. So,
wow. What a story. And here you are in the third year, you're doing $500,000, you're making money. I mean, and you're cash flow positive, and you don't have any debt, and you haven't taken on any cash. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So you still own 100% of the company. You haven't had to give up any equity. You're off and running, and you're making money. I mean, hey.
Well, I think we're probably like a little bit in the red right now.
You mean because you're not paying yourself, because you're factoring in, or is that how you?
Because I'm not paying myself, and big equipment.
Because you've been scaling up lately with the whole
So but if you took that out, we're probably cash flow positive.
I mean, seriously, it's congratulations. I mean, what an awesome story. I love how you just went for it, right? You just like, hey.
Well, I think it's because I had no idea what I was going for, but I just knew I was gonna make something great, but I didn't understand what it took. So ignorance is bliss. I think you should. That's my advice, really, though. Like, just do it. You have no idea what you're getting into, and if you do, then you should know. But
right, and if you do go for it and it doesn't work out, right, you can always just go get a job, right? I mean, that's the thing. I always tell people. I'm like, what are you worried about? So if it fails, okay, so you go back and you be an employee. If that's your biggest risk, just go for it. Just go for it.
Yeah, and that's very true. Like, and that's also been a motivator too. It's funny. I love doing the work that I love doing. Like, I love branding projects and advertising, but the idea of taking a full-time job and having to go somewhere at 9 a.m. just because.
Right.
When I'm like sleepless nights, like recently there's an 8% glass tariff right now, and there's a huge shortage in the country. So our glass prices and finding our bottle has been very hard. So I'll just up at night thinking like, should we take those bottles that are overpriced?
Yeah.
But I'd rather do that than have to go at 9 a.m. just to sit there till like an 11 a.m. meeting when I could have been doing something else. And that's what kind of fuels me at the same time. But it's comforting to be like, if all else fails, like, well, so whatever, I'll take a really good paying job.
Yep.
And look what I did. This is probably an asset on my resume.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
You're so right. The stresses that come from owning a business are all worth it. And I think most of us that own a business now, because I say the same thing. I tell my partner, Scott, and my wife all the time, like, man, if I have to go back to being a W-2 employee someday, I'm going to shoot myself in the head. Like, I don't think I can do it.
I'm like, I think I'm going to be miserable.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, with all the stresses, with all the cash flow challenges, with all the, you make less at first, it's all worth it. At least it has been for me. I can just tell anybody listening to this podcast, it's there's nothing like running your own company. It's just so hard to describe. The energy from it, the satisfaction you get from it, it's just hard to measure.
As like a ex-COO, realize like, oh man, running your own thing compared to running somebody else's thing is so different.
It's so different. And the biggest, and it's so funny you asked that. So as a COO, CEO for a couple of $40 million companies, I really thought I knew everything about running a business at that stage. And now Riderflex is about $1 million business, and we're tiny, right? But I've learned 100 times more running this company than I did those other ones. That's rubbish, because everything you look at it so differently. Whether it's the legal stuff or or maybe accounting you never dug into before, or whatever. There's just so much more to learn. And you're right. It makes you more valuable now as a professional, now that you have this experience.
Yeah, I feel like even though like we're very small and very early, I'm like, man, I really think that if I get out of this alive, or maybe not, I understand why people are like, I'm not starting another company, and they just become an investor. Like I 100% don't know if I could come in like day one without like $2 million already raised, or something. I don't know.
Now that you've been through the war once, right? Because it is a battle.
I think now I understand like why other people can or people who have been entrepreneurs can very smartly invest in others, because they probably just see it and they're like, oh yeah, that person.
Yes.
They're not going to make it or something.
Right.
Like, I think I can see someone and be like, if you didn't Google it before you asked me, this is not going to be.
So wrapping up, I just want to tell you, Becca, I really respect the hustle, right? I mean, I think that first of all, your personality is great.
Oh, thank you.
And I think a lot of people probably are attracted to your energy, and they're like, okay, if she's hustling and doing this, I know I want to be part of it. I want to help her. That's probably a huge part of your success. Congrats on the hustle and the guts to do it. And really
the ignorance to do it.
You're having fun. It sounds like, I mean, you got a cool brand going on. By the way, I love the website. I love the catchy names and the
Thank you.
What's the word? Edgy, or I don't know if edgy is the right word, but I love it. I think you used a different word, but I like it. Aggressive, I think.
Aggressive. Yeah, we're going to try to slowly morph back to aggressive. It's just edgy now.
Okay. I like it. I think it's different. And when you look at your website, even today, it's interesting. It's a little bit edgy. It's cool. It's not just a boring CPG website, right?
Yeah.
I like that. I think it's really cool. I think you got something really going on here. I'm super happy for you.
Thank you.
So today, before we hang up, right now, if you want to buy your product for the listeners, it's Whole Foods, it's Lucky's, anywhere, and then what else?
So we're just in the Rocky Mountains. So there's a bunch of grocery stores within New Mexico, Utah, Idaho, some in Wyoming, Colorado, and Kansas.
Okay.
So in Utah, so it's all the Whole Foods and all those.
Okay.
And then we're also in like Good Earth grocery stores in Utah, Lucky's Markets in Colorado.
Okay.
And maybe more secret ones soon, and maybe some new products.
How about Amazon? You don't want to launch on Amazon?
I think I need like some money.
Not yet. Okay,
as I've learned more, I'm like, oh, that's why you got to raise money. Because a lot of
so funny.
The venues take a lot of money to launch.
What if they listen to this podcast and they hit your Facebook page and they're like, hey, I live in North Carolina. Can you please ship me some?
Oh God, I will hate them, but I'll ship it to them.
Okay, everybody listening to this podcast. No, I'm just playing.
No, they'll get it, but it will take me like 2 to 3 weeks to get it to them.
Okay. All right. Oh my gosh. Becca, it's been a pleasure. Really great chatting with you. And I really appreciate you being on the Riderflex podcast. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
I'll call you. We'll do some follow-up and I'll get a hold of you. Okay.
Okay. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The Riderflex podcast can be heard just about anywhere these days, but you can visit riderflex.com/podcast to learn more about us and become a supporter of the show. Send your comments and suggestions for future topics to the email address podcast@riderflex.com or leave us a voicemail at 888-964-5876 extension 710. Thanks so much for listening and have a great day.